Before we move any further in Spanish 2, on Chapter 2, I want to go back, way back, and just make sure that you guys know we've already talked about the regular preterite tense verbs. Okay, that's AR, ER, and IR verbs. And we're moving on in chapters 1 and 2. We're going to be talking more about irregular preterite tense verbs. But I just put this little chart up because I want you to remember these are regular. In the AR, you have compré, compraste, compró, compramos, comprastes, compraron. Okay, of course, we don't really focus on the vosotros in class, but you're aware of it. Anyway, for ER, comí, comiste, comió, comimos, comistes, comieron. And then the IR, viví, viviste, vivió, vivimos, vivistes, vivieron. And obviously this is not from our book because it's got it set up with usted and then nosotros and not vice versa, which for some odd reason the book thought that would be great, but it's frustrating to me, so we'll have to see what to do with that. Anyway, these are the regular preterite tense verbs. So let's move on to talk about the irregular preterite tense verbs. Okay, so here are the irregular preterite tense verbs. Poder, poner, saber, tener, estar, hacer, venir, querer, decir, traer. Why are these all so irregular? 2 reasons. The stem changes in all the persons, so in every form. Yo, tú, usted, nosotros, ellos, ellas, all of them. They all change. And then in the pronunciation of the yo and the third person singular, él, ella, and usted endings. So this is why, these 2 reasons are why these are so highly irregular. So with these 10 highly irregular preterite tense verbs, here is our plan of attack. First, we are going to learn in chapter 1, which we're pretty much through. We're going to learn just the new stems with the familiar past tense for tú, nosotros, and ellos. Here's a recap of the irregular verbs in the past tense, or the preterite tense, in only the tú, nosotros, and ellos forms. So notice that the hieron is shortened to eron after the in decir and dijeron and trajeron. And then when changing the verb from the infinitive to the personal, the conjugated forms, notice that the stress remains on the ending. Pudiste, pudimos, pudieron. So next, now that we've talked about the tú, nosotros, and ellos forms, now we're going to talk about the other forms. And they're in a separate chapter because they're very irregular. For first things first, it's the irregular past tense ending for the yo form. Okay, it's an unstressed E. Pude, puse, supe, tuve, estuve, hice, vine, quise, dije, traje. So in changing the verbs from the infinitive to the yo form, notice that first the stress is shifted to the stem, like I just told you up there. In poder, it becomes pude, and hacer becomes hice. So you are already familiar with a stressed accented E as the past tense ending for the yo in the regular AR verbs. Be careful not to stress the ending when you're giving the yo in the irregular verbs. So just to recap, for regular verbs, you have an accented and stressed form in the yo form, yo hablé. But in the irregular, the yo form is not stressed or accented. Hice, yo hice. So now finally, let's talk about the irregular past tense endings for usted, él, and ella. The irregular ending for usted in the past tense is an unstressed O. Pudo, puso, supo, tuvo, estuvo, hizo, vino, quiso, dijo, trajo. So, and note here, in hacer, you have to change the Z to the C to a Z before adding yo. In changing the verb from the infinitive to the usted form, notice that two things. The stress is shifted to the stem, just like in the yo form. Poder becomes pudo, hacer becomes hizo, and there is no written accent mark. So you are already familiar with the stressed O as the past tense endings for the usted, él, and ella and the regular AR verbs. Be careful not to stress the endings when giving the usted form of irregular verbs. Habló, hizo. Now that you're familiar with the past tense forms for yo and usted, practice associating them with yourself and a partner. Following the sequence yo, usted, say the pronoun and verb form for each of the irregular verbs as you point to yourself and then to your partner, respectively. Once you have firmly established the relationship between the new forms and the people they represent, go through the entire sequence. Yo, usted, tú, nosotros, él, ella, ellos, ellas. Do it with poder and hacer. When you're able to give the pronoun and verb forms in sequence without hesitation, then you're ready to begin the oral practice exercises in the margin of page 83. Those are the blue boxes. You look at the picture, make your guess, and flip the page to see if you were correct.